Hi, I'm Darrell Day.
And I'm Burnie Thompson.
You know, we both proudly served our nation in uniform.
And we still serve today on the radio, expanding freedom and protecting the family budget.
And using the airwaves to educate, enlighten, and entertain, and sometimes irritate.
So join us every day and link arms, and let's do our part to restore this republic.
Join me each morning, Monday through Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
And join me from 11 to 2 on Talk Radio 101.
Hi, I'm Jay.
And I'm Katie.
Is your check engine light on?
At Gears, we will check it for free.
Don't pay for a diagnostics.
At Gears, we will check it for free.
Transmission services for $49.95.
Free shuttle service in our Gears limo.
Come let my daddy fix your car.
You know, about 3 years ago, I was buying a men's suit, and you never know who you're going to run into at the men's suit store. Well, I bumped into just about the smartest guy I know. We agree on everything except one big one, and we're going to debate that tonight. Tho Bishop and I are going to discuss how to protect liberty against the federal government. Thanks for pulling up a chair with us. I'm here with Tho Bishop, and anytime I want to know something about politics or history or the Constitution or the founding generation, I call Tho because he knows. But we disagree this time, and Tho, let's tell everybody a little bit about you. You spent the last 3 years in the corridors of power, the bowels, perhaps, of power in Washington, D.C. What did you do there?
Worked as a Deputy Communications Director for the Financial Services Committee. Our committee dealt with banking regulation, the Federal Reserve, all that sort of fun stuff.
I mean, you've been right in the middle of that. You've seen what Washington, D.C. is like. It reminds me a little bit of the Hunger Games, but not as funny. I mean, it's thriving there, but the rest of the country's not.
No, I mean, they have great Sunday brunches, construction's booming everywhere. It's a fun place to be, but it's the most evil city in the world.
Everybody walks around with a business card and a smile and a nice suit, and money's flowing, but the rest of the country's not. The bow tie, though, tell me about the bow tie. Do you tie that by yourself?
I sure do.
That is not a clip-on tie?
Not at all.
I can vouch for that. Now, is there any truth to what I've heard? The secret to tying a bow tie is very much like tying your shoe. Is there truth to that?
Very much so. It takes a little bit of getting used to, but once you're in, from there on out, you're good.
I know a guy who can tie a bow tie with one, he can undo it and tie a bow tie with one hand. Now, I can too. I just clip it right underneath.
I'm not quite to that level yet. I'm working on it, though. I'm working on it.
Well, I want to talk to you a little bit about one thing you and I are very concerned about, and that is the power of the federal government. The way the federal government is getting involved in every aspect of our lives. It reminds me of Benito Mussolini. He said everything inside the state, nothing outside the state. In other words, everything's political. And now everything seems to be a federal issue. There was the old joke, what are you going to make a federal issue about it? Well, yeah, now pretty much everything's a federal issue. There are two big ideas in America today about how to slow down the federal government. One, you buy into. States call a constitutional convention and add liberty amendments. Another idea is one I buy into, and that is states standing against the federal government and yelling no. We are not going to do that. We don't recognize that anti-constitutional act. And you favor state constitutional convention. I favor states saying no. And when we get back, we're going to get into more of that in just a moment.
Hi, I'm Jay.
And I'm Katie. At Gears, we're proud to offer you a complete transmission service starting at $49.95.
We also offer free shuttle service in our Gears limo.
Lifetime warranties.
Transmission services for $49.95.
Come let my daddy fix your car.
Hi, I'm Daryl Day.
And I'm Burnie Thompson.
You know, we both proudly served our nation in uniform.
And we still serve today on the radio, expanding freedom and protecting the family budget.
And using the airwaves to educate, enlighten, and entertain, and sometimes irritate.
So join us every day and link arms, and let's do our part to restore this republic.
Join me each morning, Monday through Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
And join me from 11 to 2 on Talk Radio 101.
Hi, I'm Jay.
And I'm Katie.
Is your check engine light on?
At Gears, we will check it for free.
Don't pay for a diagnostics.
At Gears, we will check it for free.
Transmission services for $49.95.
Free shuttle service in our Gears limo.
Come let my daddy fix your car.
If you need your car worked on, take it where I get my car worked on. Gears Transmissions, whether it's your engine, your brakes, or $49 transmission special, Gears Transmissions will take care of you. And you know you're never going to get upsold, you're never going to get swindled, and you'll get to meet my friend Jay. My good friend Jay, who, by the way, if you like what we're doing here on the Whiskey Rebellion, this is part of Gears Productions. Gears Transmissions you can find online at gearstransmissions.com or in Panama City near the mall, just about a mile up 231 toward Interstate 10. On your left, it's right by the Dollar General. One thing most of us can agree with is the federal government is too damn big and too intrusive and too much into our lives. It's preventing us from making our own decisions, and it's sucking the lifeblood out of our economy. Now, what do we do about it? You and me, what do we do about it? There are two great ideas. One is states can call a constitutional convention. It's never happened before. And if states call a constitutional convention, they can add amendments, and they can perhaps limit the power of the federal government. There's another big idea, and it's one that I buy into, and that is called state nullification. It's kind of what Colorado did recently with the federal marijuana drug law. Colorado said, we don't recognize your anti-constitutional act. We're not going to do it. We're going to nullify that law. We're not going to comply. Two schools of thought to resist federal government's encroachment into our lives. Though Bishop, you believe that the best approach right now is for states to do what they've never done, call a constitutional convention. Tell us why.
I sure do. It's because it's a matter of the leadership in the states right now. If you had generals or governors like Andrew Jackson that were willing to go tell the federal government, okay, I dare you to cross these state lines, then nullification could work. And I'm not an opponent of nullification. I think that it's going to take a lot of arrows to get the federal government back to its constitutional limits. But the best way to do it, I think, in the short term is through amending the Constitution, because the Constitution as it is now is not what the founders signed on to. You take Obamacare, for example. Obamacare falls apart without the ability to tax your income. If you follow the Constitution by the letter, as it is written right now, you can still have the income tax. The only way to get rid of that the biggest hammer that the government has on anyone in America, you have to amend the Constitution and remove that from the standing law.
So that would be your constitutional amendment. You would do what? Abolish the income tax? The tax on wages?
Yes, you take away the
16th Amendment.
The 16th Amendment. You prevent the direct taxes on Americans, essentially. So that way it would force a movement to a consumption tax, something similar to the fair tax. And if you do that, then you take away the biggest hammer the government has on regulating personal behavior, marriage taxes, Obamacare taxes.
And that's the thing about taxes, though, is taxes are merely a way for the government to get money to fund its essential purposes. It is not there to nudge our behavior, to control our behavior, to punish us, like the Supreme Court recently said. Taxes should never be to punish Americans, especially for things that they don't buy. And Americans are fed up. We've had enough of this, and we're trying to figure out a peaceful way to say enough is enough. And what you're saying is a constitutional amendment to abolish the 16th Amendment, the tax on income or wages. Now, how do you get 2/3 of the states
to
agree?
To me, it's a simple issue of politics. Okay, if you can't win an election based on, would you abolish the IRS? Yes or no? If you can't win that, I mean, then to me, you're not running your campaign right. The most hated institution in the government, I mean, still is. I mean, amongst the NSA, TSA, the IRS is still the most hated, the most feared. If you can get people to rise up I mean, every single, in April, we are reminded every single year the amount of money they're taking away from our pockets. It gives you a common enemy. And if you take away
so the rallying cry is down with the IRS, down with the IRS.
And that was initially what kicked off the Tea Party. I mean, the first Tea Party rallies came on April 15th. There is that populist fervor right there to take on an issue that affects everyone's wallets.
Very interesting. Here's my question, though. So you're saying that, in your opinion, governors and legislatures throughout the United States, like our own, Governor Rick Scott, President of the Senate Don Gates, Speaker Will Weatherford, they have not shown the backbone to stand up and say no. I'll tell you right now, Mr. Governor, I'll tell you right now, President Gates and Speaker Weatherford, if you allow Floridians to be charged 2 or 3 times more than we are being charged for our health insurance, you will have a price to pay. So we need a decision. We need to make a decision. And you're saying even Republican governors who have a reputation of being conservatives don't have the backbone to stand against the federal government. Why don't they? Is it because they're receiving so much money from the federal government? I mean, it goes out first, and then it comes back.
In a big way, I think that's definitely one of the cases. Another one is national ambition. If you take on Washington, you're taking on the RNC. You're taking on national interests. So that's, I think, a big thing. There's a fringe, a fear of being on the fringe. I mean, you saw Republicans walking away from the Tea Party early on. They became to embrace it when they had electoral success, and now they're running away from it again.
Well, you had Speaker John Boehner say, Speaker Boehner said that, you know, that the Tea Party is obsolete. He said that recently. He said that a month ago. Now, I think the Tea Party tends to go to sleep a little early, which is why we've got the Whiskey Rebellion. Just to team up, though, and like you said, you're not saying don't nullify state law, not federal law. You're not saying not to. You're saying we need to do both, but the best approach is going to be a rallying cry against the IRS, and on that, 2/3 of the states ought to be able to agree.
Absolutely. I mean, the developments in Colorado and Washington, those are very, very positive to me. Those are expanding individual freedoms.
Those states saying no to federal government law.
Right. What's going to be interesting is the case of states like South Carolina. You have the state legislature standing up and saying nullify Obamacare. They want to prosecute federal workers that try to enforce Obamacare on their people. If they have success there, then maybe that can start, a chain of events. If it works. But you have Governor Nikki Haley not embracing it already. Until you have that action, it takes a first spark. But until you get that way, I view the most immediate way is through taking away the taxing powers.
Well, one of our problems is politicians love to tell us. They love to tell us that we need to get a license or a permit to cut hair, to drive a taxi, because we need to prove that we're competent. I'm telling you that you politicians, you're the ones who need to prove your competency. You need to know your rule book. And I'm all for mandatory random testing of your knowledge of the Constitution. Because that's the problem, though. That's the problem. That's why they're not willing to stand up. I had this conversation with the President of the Senate, Don Gates, and he didn't quite understand. And I'll tell you, even some of the most thoughtful conservative commentators don't understand state nullification. Mark Levin, for example, whom I admire very much, says that it is a neo-Confederate, wacky fringe movement. He says that James Madison opposed nullification, James Madison being the father of the Constitution. James Madison did not. James Madison specifically opposed South Carolina's version of nullification. South Carolina made the argument back then that if one state nullifies an anti-constitutional federal law, that all states nullified it. What Madison did support and Jefferson did support was that individual states could say, not in this state. And Governor Rick Scott, that's what you ought to say about Obamacare. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Jay.
And I'm Katie.
We would like to invite you to Gears for a complete transmission service for only $49.95.
If your car needs belts, brakes, tune-ups, and more, we're the place to come to. We have lifetime warranties on our exclusive Gears transmissions.
Come see us.
Hi, I'm Darrell Day.
And I'm Burnie Thompson.
You know, we both proudly served our nation in uniform.
And we still serve today on the radio, expanding freedom and protecting the family budget.
And using the airwaves to educate, enlighten, and entertain, and sometimes irritate.
So join us every day and link arms, and let's do our part to restore this republic.
Join me each morning, Monday through Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
And join me from 11 to 2 on Talk Radio 101.
Hi, I'm Jay.
And I'm Katie.
Is your check engine light on?
At Gears, we will check it for free.
Don't pay for a diagnostics.
At Gears, we will check it for free.
Transmission services for $49.95.
Free shuttle service in our Gears limo.
Come let my daddy fix your car.
Let's expand freedom and protect the family budget. You and me, right here every week. And if you like what we're doing, drop me a line at myfreedomradio.com. That's where you can email me and let me know your thoughts. On the Burnie Thompson Show, a Gears production. Want to know something interesting? Of course you want to know something interesting, and you wouldn't be here. Tho Bishop, his favorite American of all time is Alexander Hamilton. Now, Tho Bishop is a bit of a libertarian, a small government guy. If Tho Bishop were around during the days of the Founding Fathers, he would have been an anti-federalist. And Alexander Hamilton was a federalist. He believed that the federal government had to be a little bit more powerful than was comfortable for Thomas Jefferson or James Madison. And Tho, I want to ask you, because today you're about as small a government guy that I know. It must freak your libertarian friends out to find out that you're a big Alexander Hamilton fan. Why?
Well, it's because he was the original American. I mean, if you look at the list of the Founding Fathers, most of them came from upper families. Washington married into a lot of money. He was a big landowner. Alexander Hamilton was very different. He was born in the middle of nowhere. He was an illegitimate child in the middle of the islands, and he came to America without a penny in his pocket. But what he was able to do in 50 years, one of the shortest lives of any of the Founding Fathers, was completely shape American history. Being able to have that, I mean, America's all about being able to build yourself up. Mm-hmm. And nobody embodies that better than Alexander Hamilton.
How old was he when he got to America?
He got to America when he was 18 years old. Enrolled in King's College, which is now Princeton. Mm-hmm. And he dropped out after a few years because of the war. He was looking for the ability to prove his courage, to prove his manhood.
And he was a writer, I believe, at first, didn't he? He was a great writer, and he served in the Revolutionary War.
Absolutely. He would, in New York, he would go to pubs, much like this, and talk to, there was the building revolutionary spirit.
Yeah,
and he was writing, challenging on anyone defending the powers of the British Crown. And that's what led him to the Revolutionary War. George Washington came to New York after the Battle of Boston, and he caught his eye. In a few short years, Hamilton had more trust from George Washington than any other man in the history in George Washington's lifetime. He would trust him on missions, had to challenge generals at times, and all during this, while fighting a war, he would carry around books on economics and trade policy, and teach himself the important tools needed to build a government.
So he believed we were going to win this. We were going to win this revolution, and then we were going to have to build a country.
Right. He was definitely afraid of anarchy and chaos. Mm-hmm. And he'd seen that from his times in the islands, of the inability of man at times to be able to control themselves. Mm-hmm. And so he believed that a stronger government was necessary to keep society upright. Unfortunately, though, is that you have to take into context exactly when this was coming about.
Exactly right.
Wealth of Nations was written in 1776. Most of the economic works before that were defending the crown, the monarchy. His political views, I mean, he was looking around the history of the world, and the most powerful nations were Great Britain and France. Yeah. And so he wanted America to be on that standing. He had that vision for greatness.
He struggled with what they all struggled with, finding a federal government big enough and powerful enough to fund an army, to defend ourselves, but not too powerful. I'll tell you a funny story. Alexander Hamilton was a Federalist. Thomas Jefferson and James Madison were anti-federalists. So my 11-year-old was doing homework the other day, and she says, "Daddy, what would you have been? Are you an anti-federalist or a federalist?" And I asked her, I said, "Well, what's the difference?" And she said, "Anti-federalists want smaller government, and federalists want a little bit bigger government." George Washington was a Federalist. Alexander Hamilton was a Federalist. I said, baby, Daddy would have been an anti-Federalist. Now, my 11-year-old says, well, George Washington's my favorite. I think I would have been a Federalist. My 9-year-old pops up off the couch and goes, Sarah, you want big government? But that's your point. Context matters.
Absolutely.
Because then it was small and defined and powerful within those limits. Today, like fire, they have spread the power all over the place. And we've got to do something, though, to stop the spread of the federal government, the fires being lit everywhere, because it's going to burn the whole place down.
Absolutely. And the thing is, the Constitution now is much different than when it was then. Hamilton was a big believer in checking power. And when the Constitution was written, the Senate was supposed to play the role of checking federal excess.
Yeah.
He wrote in the Constitution about how any rule that was exceeded the powers granted in it cannot be void. I mean, he was supporting nullification in modern day age, essentially.
Yeah.
And so the vision of what the Constitution was then is different than what it is now. And until we get the government back to the original founders' intentions,
which is limited powers. I mean, and here's another thing that I want you to think about. Where do rights come from? Rights come from God. So no man can give us rights. The best we can do is give power to the government. The government doesn't have a single right. And whenever government gives itself more power, that's as absurd as you or I trying to give each other more rights. I can't give you more rights. I'm not the Lord. And the government cannot give itself more power because it's not the people. That's a very important concept. And I have a question for you, though. You believe that states ought to call a constitutional convention and add a liberty amendment abolishing the income tax.
yes.
My question to you is, if the federal government right now doesn't respect, if it violates the Constitution today, why won't it simply violate that one if we were to add that amendment?
Because there's never been a positive check on the federal government. There has never been the states getting together and saying this is explicitly wrong. In the past, it's always been the Supreme Court deciding what the federal government can and cannot do. Not the way it was supposed to happen, but that's the way it's been for the last 200 plus years. If you actually have the states getting together and actively saying you can't do this anymore, then that crosses the line that the federal government, even the federal government, hasn't done yet. So if you do that, then I think that's when you're going to have outbreak. When you have democratically elected state representatives, the people closest to the constituents themselves, saying stop, and the government keeps going on, that's when you know we're in trouble.
Well, I think part of the problem too is the U.S. Supreme Court making rulings when I believe that they are actually opinions, because when one branch of the federal government says that it is the final say of the power of government, that's absurdity on crack as far as I'm concerned. How do we put a check on the Supreme Court being the final decider? Judicial review has become a problem.
Well, the federal government was never supposed to be able to decide how much power the federal government has. I mean, that was the way the Constitution was designed. In schools today, they talk about the balance of power. They talk about the three branches of government. That's not the way, that wasn't the original checks and balances. It was states, it was federalism, dual sovereignty. And if you have competition of sovereignty, competition for the desires of the people, then their decisions will be in the best interest of the people. If you could trust the government to decide how much power it should have, then we're talking about Madison's Angels.
Well, I'll tell you, we're talking, and that's a big deal. We are talking exactly about that, and I think one of the most positive things that has come from federal government encroachment and overreach and abuse is that young people who were supposed to benefit from Obamacare are saying no. And I want to ask you about that. You are 24 years old. You just came from Washington, D.C., where you worked for 3 years in the Congress. And you know what young people are saying. And I want to ask you about that in just a moment.
Hi, I'm Darrell Day.
And I'm Burnie Thompson.
You know, we both proudly served our nation in uniform.
And we still serve today on the radio, expanding freedom and protecting the family budget.
And using the airwaves to educate, enlighten, and entertain, and sometimes irritate.
So join us every day and link arms, and let's do our part to restore this republic.
Join me each morning, Monday through Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
And join me from 11 to 2 on Talk Radio 101.
Hi, I'm Jay.
And I'm Katie.
Is your check engine light on?
At Gears, we will check it for free.
Don't pay for a diagnostics.
At Gears, we will check it for free.
Transmission services for $49.95.
Free shuttle service in our Gears limo.
Come let my daddy fix your car.
Everybody's ticked off. We need a statesman in the United States of America because everybody's a little ticked off. You know what I'm doing, though? I watched the Nelson Mandela, service, and I noticed that you can do pretty much anything you want and get close to the President of the United States. So I want to invite those of you who are representing the people to come right here into the Whiskey Rebellion's Liberty Lounge, and we've got a few questions for you because we're a little concerned. We vote for you, we send you off, you say the right things, and then when you get there, you tend to forget us. Oh, you remember the party bosses, and you remember the big donors and all of those guys, but we want to remind you every night, every week that we're right here, and we don't want you to forget that. This will be your test of competency, and I can't wait for you to join us. Though, tell us a little bit, quickly, how ticked off young people are. Because Obamacare was supposed to make things better for young people, and it's not.
Right. This is the first entitlement that directly impacts young people more than anyone else. And they're furious about it. And Obama was supposed to bring us, cheaper goods. He was supposed to make life easier, hope and change. And instead, they have more money taken out of their wallet. They don't have jobs. And it's an opportunity here for small government principles. I mean, you look at the success of libertarians like Ron Paul have had and massing, rock star-like crowds. There is a desire there. But when you have the Republican Party more concerned about banning glass pipes and video slot machines than actually having the legislature act on nullifying Obamacare,
absolutely,
that's when you have mistakes. You want to get young people involved.
Mistakes are when you wear brown socks with a tuxedo. What these guys are doing is just plain wrong. And I'll tell you, though, your point is a good one, and that is Republicans, Democrats, Americans, we need to recognize the urgency of the situation, and we need to step up and do something about it. And you and I, we're not going to put up with it much longer. I do want to invite, though, I think one thing that'll spice things up around here a little bit more is to have some good dissenting opinions. And I've been looking for some Democrats or Republicans who disagree, especially Democrats. If you want to come join us and have this is the Mandela Sign Language. I think you guys get this. This hand this way. Come on in, because without ideas colliding, reason can never prevail. We'll see you soon. Thanks for joining us on the Whiskey Rebellion. And Tho Bishop, your last thoughts about what we're going to do, quickly.
This is the most important thing that we have. It's government versus the people. And shows like this, people like you, we can win this fight.
And when we learn sign language, we can't lose. We'll see you soon. Let's expand freedom and protect the family budget. You and me, right here every week on the Burnie Thompson Show, a Gears production.